Good morning and welcome to the Breakfast News on Rajya Sabha Television. I'm Aishwarya Kapoor. Let us begin with this morning's headlines. Pakistan bans media coverage of Hafiz Saeed's Jamaat-ud-Dawa. For the first time acknowledges JUD is the other wing of Lashkar-e-Toiba. Prime Minister expresses shock over killing of Indian youth in police firing in Nepal. Modi calls up Nepalese counterpart. Envoy summoned to register concern. Last day of campaigning for Bihar's fifth and final phase of elections today. 57 constituencies to vote to elect their leaders among 827 candidates on 5th of November. India and Indonesia signed Memorandum of Understanding on Renewable Energy and Cultural Exchange. On third day of Vice President's visit today, he will inaugurate a business forum meet in Jakarta. And European observers expressed serious concerns over the recently concluded Turkey elections in which the AKP regained majority, say violent run-up to polls did not allow free campaigning. The big story, well, Pakistan has for the first time acknowledged that the Mumbai attack mastermind Hafiz Saeed-led outfit Jamaat-ud-Dawa was a wing of Lashkar-e-Toiba. Now, in a step that is being seen as part of its crackdown on terror, Islamabad has banned media coverage of militant groups like the JUD. The Pakistani Electronic Media Regulatory Authority, or the PEMRA, issued a notification banning all satellite television channels and FM radio from coverage of Lashkar-e-Toiba or the LET, Jamaat-ud-Dawa or the JUD, and Insaniyat Foundation or the FIF under UN restriction. The UN had declared the JUD a terror organization and designated Hafiz Saeed as a terrorist in December 2008. Now, a ban has also been imposed on the electronic media from running any advertisement of these three organizations for collection of funds in the name of social work. Now, this move is a part of Pakistan's National Action Plan that was devised in January this year following the Peshawar Army Public School massacre in which mostly children were killed. Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif has assured the US President last month of effective action against the US designated terrorist individuals and entities. All right, Major General retired Afsir Karim, who's a national security expert, is now joining us on the phone line. Thank you so much, sir, for joining us this morning. Sir, now welcome Pakistan crackdown on terrorism. Now, is this move likely to be linked to PM Nawaz Sharif's assurance to US President Barack Obama last month to take effective action against US UN designated terrorists?
Actually, it is. It was a pledge made to US. They forced them to do it. But what kind of a thing it will have effect on them, on the terrorist organization? I think it will have no effect on them. They'll get through various other channels and means. There will be no sanction against them, or finances have not been stolen, I think. Neither any action has been taken against them. So I think it's a symbolic and non-effective action, but it's definitely sort of a step forward from Pakistan's point of view.
All right. So in Pakistan, they're imposing a ban on the media coverage of Jamaat-ud-Dawa, FIF and LET under the National Action Plan. But will it have any effective, take any effective action against these organizations? That is something to be seen. Thank you so much, sir, for joining us this morning. And in yet another instance of ceasefire violation by Pakistan troops, 2 army jawans were killed when Pakistani troops pounded Indian positions with mortars and machine guns in Gurez sector in Kashmir along the line of control. Pakistani troops opened fire from 12:30 p.m. on Monday and the firing lasted till 2 p.m. Pakistani troops used automatic rifles, machine guns and mortars to target the Indian posts. The ceasefire violation comes days ahead of Prime Minister Narendra Modi's scheduled visit to Jammu and Kashmir on 7th of November. And Prime Minister Narendra Modi has expressed a shock over the killing of an Indian police firing in Nepal. Modi spoke to his Nepalese counterpart and has requested for details. Now, India also summoned the Nepalese envoy over the incident and conveyed that it is deeply concerned over the killing. In a pre-dawn swoop on Monday, Nepalese police cracked down on protesters blocking a key bridge to India. The two sides clashed, resulting in the death of at least one person and leaving several others injured. While Nepal has assured a full probe, the surprise action helped to reopen the main Birganj-Raxaul border trading point for the first time in 40 days.
Protesters staging a sit-in for the last 40 days at the Indo-Nepal border were forcibly removed by Nepal's police early on Monday. They used batons, opened fire to disperse Madhesi protesters, evicting them from the crucial Miteri bridge at the border. The protesters also clashed with the police during the action. One Indian was killed in the firing. India has taken up the matter diplomatically with Nepal.
अस्पताल से कि नेपाली पुलिस ने से गोली मारी है, गोली लग गया।
क्या और क्या अभी?
मेरा भांजा है वो।
भांजा है
जी।
आप लोग को बॉडी मिली अभी?
नहीं मिली अभी। फोन आया था, अभी लेने के लिए जा रहे थे, नहीं जाने दे रहे।
कि हमारी तरफ भी करीब 35 उनको जैसे इंजर्ड है पुलिस वाले, तो घटना का छानबीन के बाद में होगा। कहीं भी देखिए, यानी एक शांतिपूर्ण प्रदर्शन होना, धरना जुलूस होना प्रजातंत्र में स्वाभाविक बात है, लेकिन बिल्कुल जैसे यानी अपने हथियारों से लैस होके, अपने घरेलू हथियारों से लैस होके सुरक्षा निकाय के ऊपर जैसे यानी एग्रेशन करेंगे, तो इसके बाद ये दुर्घटना, ये देखिए अच्छा नहीं है। जो भी हो, इसको हमें बहुत बड़ा खेद है।
सुबह में एक बैग लोग सोए हुए थे 5 बजे के करीब में, पौने 5 बजे। इसके बाद जो है बहुत ज्यादा की तादाद में नेपाली फोर्स यहाँ आया, बंदूक लेके आया, लाठी लेकर के आया। वो सशस्त्र फोर्स था, आकर के शुरू से ही टेंट में जो सोए हुए लोग थे उन लोगों को लात से और लाठी से मारते हुए भगाने लगे और इस तरह से जो है टेंट तोड़ने लगे।
After removing the protesters, the police opened the Birganj-Raxaul border point. About 200 Indian trucks stranded in Nepal crossed over into India. However, the protests have strangled supplies from India to Nepal.
यहाँ पे मधेसी लोग जो थे पिछले करीब 1-1.5 महीने से बैठे हुए, तो उनको जो है नेपाल साइड से हटाया गया, नेपाल साइड से कार्रवाई की गई है। तो उसके बाद से आज सुबह से गाड़ियाँ आ रही हैं और इधर में तो कोई दिक्कत है नहीं। इधर पुलिस वाले भी और एसएसपी वाले, ये प्रशासन लोग हैं लगे हुए।
फंस गए थे जाम के कारण। आज हम इंडिया में बहुत आके खुशी हुए हैं, जा रहे अपना परिवार से मिलने के लिए। बहुत हमें खुशी हो रहा है इस बात सुन के कि आज जो बॉर्डर खुल गया है।
There were reports of sporadic protests in Birganj by the Madhesi groups against the police intervention on Monday. The Madhesis, who have been protesting against Nepal's new constitution, returned to the bridge hours after the police used batons to forcibly remove them. Talks between the Nepal government and the Madhesi group ended inconclusively on Sunday. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
And now our special segment on Bihar Assembly polls, Verdict 2015. Well, on to Bihar now, where campaigning for the 5th and final phase of elections ends today at 5 in the evening. Now, 57 constituencies in 9 districts will go to polls in the 5th phase on 5th of November. Now, these include 10 seats each in Madhubani and Darbhanga, 7 each in Purnia and Katihar, 6 in Araria, 5 in Supaul, and 4 each in Kishanganj, Madhepura and Saharsa. A total of 827 candidates, including 58 female contestants, are in the poll fray. For the Grand Alliance, the RJD is contesting on 26 seats, while the JDU is fighting from 21 and the Congress is contesting from 8 seats. For the NDA, the BJP is fighting on 42 seats, while the LJP is fighting on 5 and the RLSP on 4. The counting day is 8th of November. Well, the campaign blitzkrieg for the 5th and final phase of Bihar Assembly elections is on in full swing. Prime Minister Modi and Congress Vice President Rahul Gandhi hosted a bunch of rallies across the state on Monday. In fact, in his most stinging retort yet, Modi rigged up the 1984 anti-Sikh riots and said that the Congress had no right to lecture him on intolerance.
With only one phase remaining for the Bihar elections, campaigning is heating up in the state. Prime Minister Narendra Modi addressed 3 rallies in Purnia, Katihar and Darbhanga. Modi focused on the attack on the BJP over intolerance. He said the Congress has no right to talk about intolerance after the 1984 anti-Sikh riots.
इंदिरा गांधी जी की हत्या के दूसरा दिन, तीसरा दिन, चौथा दिन दिल्ली में, हिंदुस्तान में सिखों का कत्ले आम चल रहा था। कत्लेआम किया जा रहा था। कांग्रेस पार्टी पर गंभीर आरोप लगे थे, कांग्रेस के नेताओं पर गंभीर आरोप लगे थे, और आज उसी 2 नवंबर को कांग्रेस पार्टी टॉलरेंस पर भाषण देने लगी है।
Congress Vice President Rahul Gandhi also addressed 3 rallies in Bihar. The rallies were held in Araria, Purnia and Katihar. Rahul took the attack to the BJP and the Prime Minister and reiterated that his alliance would win the polls.
यहाँ पे अब बीजेपी नहीं जीतने वाली, ये बात उनको भी मालूम हो गई है, ये हमें भी मालूम है। बिहार में भाईचारा और प्यार की राजनीति होगी। सबको हम एक साथ ले जाएंगे और पूरा बिहार एक साथ आगे बढ़ेगा।
Other star campaigners were on the campaign trail as well. Union Home Minister Rajnath Singh and Chief Minister Nitish Kumar addressed rallies in the state.
मैं महागठबंधन के नेताओं से अपील करना चाहता हूं, हम ऐसी सरकार नहीं बनाना चाहेंगे, नफरत की चिंगारी पैदा करके हम कोई सरकार नहीं बनाना चाहेंगे बहनों भाइयों, क्योंकि हम लोग राजनीति केवल सरकार बनाने के लिए नहीं करते हैं, हम राजनीति करते हैं तो समाज बनाने के लिए राजनीति करते हैं, देश बनाने के लिए राजनीति करते हैं।
The election in Bihar has reached its final stretch. Polling for just one phase remains in the state's 5-phase elections. Campaigning for the final phase will end at 5 p.m. on Tuesday. 57 constituencies in 9 districts will go to polls on the 5th of November, with a total of 827 candidates in the fray. Counting of votes will be held on the 8th of November. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
Well, continuing the attack on BJP and Prime Minister Narendra Modi over alleged rising intolerance in the country, Congress President Sonia Gandhi and Vice President Rahul Gandhi will lead a protest march of party MPs and office bearers from Parliament House to Rashtrapati Bhavan today. The march aims to urge the President to use his constitutional powers to check the atmosphere of divisiveness, which it alleges is being promoted by the members of the ruling camp. The two leaders had already met the President on Monday and raised the issue with him. The move by the main opposition party came in the backdrop of protests by artists, writers and scientists over the alleged incidents of intolerance. Both BJP and Congress locked horns over the issue. And with the Naxal violence continuing unabated, the centre has called a meeting of chief ministers of 7 Naxal-affected states today to chalk out a strategy to fight the menace. The meeting will be chaired by Home Minister Rajnath Singh. Now, issues like left-wing extremism in the 35 worst affected districts in Chhattisgarh, Jharkhand, Bihar, Andhra Pradesh, Maharashtra, Odisha and Telangana, along with interstate coordination, will be discussed. Now, a total of 105 districts in 10 states are affected by Naxal violence, of which 35 districts in 7 states are considered to be worst hit. And what all events are also likely to unfold during the course of the day, let us find out in Day Ahead. Norway's Foreign Minister Borge Brende, who arrived in New Delhi on Monday to attend the 5th India-Norway Joint Commission meeting, will be in Mumbai today. He will hold a meeting with Reserve Bank of India Governor Raghuram Rajan and will also meet with Maharashtra Chief Minister Devendra Fadnavis. Now, he will also inaugurate the office of Norwegian Consulate General. On Monday, he held bilateral talks with Sushma Swaraj and discussed a wide range of issues. The Constitution Bench of the Supreme Court will debate the steps which can improve the collegium system. Now, this is the same bench who struck down the 99th constitutional amendment that scrapped the collegium system that brought in NJAC for the appointment of judges in higher judiciary. They declared the constitutional amendment as unconstitutional by a majority of 4:1. Supreme Court asked the centre and all parties who appeared in NJAC hearing to give suggestions on the issue. A Delhi court will pronounce the quantum of punishment in the Uber rape case. The court will be hearing on arguments and pronouncement of quantum of sentence in the case in which a driver has been convicted of raping a 25-year-old woman executive in his taxi. Hardik Patel's police custody will end today. He is booked under sedition charges by the Gujarat police. Gujarat High Court reserved its order after hearing arguments in a plea of Hardik and 5 others seeking quashing of FIR against them. And in Breakfast News, we'll take a very short break. Much more coming up. Stay with us. Now, India and Indonesia have signed Memorandum of Understanding on Renewable Energy and Cultural Exchange. On the third day of his visit today, Vice President Mohammad Hamid Ansari and his counterpart from Indonesia, Jusuf Kalla, will inaugurate a business forum meeting in Jakarta. Now, the VP is also expected to inaugurate the bust of Mahatma Gandhi at a university. The Vice President is on a 4-day visit to Indonesia and Brunei.
The Vice President terming the meeting with his Indonesian counterpart, Jusuf Kalla, the reinvigoration of the India-Indonesia relationship, as the two countries embark on a phase of rapid economic growth. India and Indonesia held delegation-level talks before announcing MOUs for cooperation on new and renewable energy and cultural exchange, taking forward close collaboration in these areas. In a joint press statement, Vice President Mohammad Hamid Ansari and his Indonesian counterpart announced positive exchanges of views and potential for vast benefits ahead.
We share similar positions on global and regional issues, including climate change and maritime security and freedom of seas in the South China Sea. India and Indonesia today signed a Memorandum of Understanding on cooperation in new and renewable energy sector, and all of you have been witness to it. This cooperation is important as both India and Indonesia have committed themselves to reduce carbon emission by 35% and 29% respectively.
The Vice President also called on Indonesian President Joko Widodo. He is to meet parliamentary speakers on Tuesday before departing for Bali, seen as the cultural leg of his Indonesia visit. With camera persons Manoj Kumar and Nilesh Pandey, Vaibhav Verma's report for Rajya Sabha TV from Jakarta.
Well, the India-Indonesia cultural link going back centuries has thrived, extending to new expansion and overlaps in modern times. And this was the thrust of Vice President Hamid Ansari's address to the gathering of distinguished guests in Jakarta last evening. The guests included members of the Indian delegation, people who had made a mark in the business, cultural and other areas in Indonesia, including Indian nationals, Indonesian nationals and people of Indian origin settled in the country.
We welcome ASEAN's plans to establish economic and political relationship with neighboring nations, and we have worked on increasing bilateral trade, promoted foreign investment and strengthened diplomatic relations with all ASEAN members. Our bilateral relationship is a key element of our engagement with the entire ASEAN region. We look forward to strong cooperation with Indonesia in building bridges and deepening our relationship with the entire region.
And our correspondent Vaibhav Verma spoke with India's ambassador to Indonesia, Gurjeet Singh, on achievements, possibilities and potential ahead in the India-Indonesia relationship. Let's take a listen.
I have with me India's ambassador to Indonesia, Mr. Gurjeet Singh. Thank you for joining us, sir. My first question to you, the India-Indonesia link, one, how deep is it? And then what are the challenges and the initiatives to overcome those challenges going forward?
I think the India-Indonesia link is as deep as the ocean between us. And it is very old. The challenge is how to contemporize the old heritage. We are both democratic countries. We are both pluralistic countries. We are both youthful countries. But do we do something to sustain these ideas? So that is why today in much of the meetings we have discussed democracy. We have discussed youth. We have discussed things like that. So Sahabat India was one of those efforts to re-engage. And I would say that the visit of his Honorable Vice President has helped to revitalize these ideas and put a modern face to an old relationship.
So much has been said about the trade and investment relations falling short of potential, the high potential that exists in this particular area. What steps are being taken to overcome the shortcomings here?
Well, trade is actually linked to world pricing and to currencies. In India, there's a huge demand for coal and palm oil, which are our main imports from Indonesia. So Indonesia doesn't need to do any promotion. We just keep buying because it's a demand push, right? At the same time, the demand push in Indonesia has gone down because of shrinkage of their imports and increase in their reduction in their current account deficit. There is a huge energy mix and a food-related mix. Even some of the Indonesian investors who have gone to India actually are largely food-related. But the Indian investors who come here are largely manufacturing-related. So we have to see how to do this. One of the areas where we are weak at is that the B2B connect is not good. So the business forum we are having tomorrow, and much of the efforts my embassy has made on the last 3 years, are how to enhance B2B connect. Our businessmen must talk to each other. And Honorable Vice President today has said all the agreements are in place. It is for our business to be facilitated with the right approach, right nudge, right push. And that is where I think our real challenge lies. We are not looking for balanced trade. We are looking for economic expansion.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
And in other news, Defence Minister Manohar Parrikar will reach Malaysia today on the second leg of his two-nation tour. Now, he will reach Malaysia to take part in ASEAN Defence Ministers Meet, which starts from today in Kuala Lumpur. Earlier, Parrikar was in Russia for a 2-day visit where both nations decided to step up military ties. Both nations agreed on various defence projects, purchase and cooperation, including a multi-billion-dollar deal for new generation anti-ballistic missile system, leasing of a second nuclear submarine, agreement on manufacturing 200 Kamov 226T helicopters in India under Make in India initiative, and smooth and reliable supply of spare parts and systems Sukhoi 30 MKI fighter jets. Parrikar took part in the Indo-Russian meeting of the Intergovernmental Commission on Military Technical Cooperation and set the stage for the inking of these agreements during Prime Minister Narendra Modi's visit to Moscow in early December. India also expressed its unhappiness to Russia over selling defence equipment to Pakistan. On to a big international story. Well, mystery has deepened over the Russian plane crash in Egypt's Sinai Peninsula. While the airliner has ruled out a technical or human error, its claims to have been upbraided by the experts who called such assertions premature. Well, as the representatives from at least 5 other countries joined the investigation of the crash, new questions also arose about the aircraft's repair history and the possibility that a terrorist act felled it on Saturday. Here are all the details.
There is still no clarity over what caused a Russian passenger jet to break up in mid-air and crash in Egypt's Sinai Peninsula. The Russian airliner has blamed external influence for the crash that killed 224 people, ruling out the possibility of technical fault and human error. Officials say it is too soon to tell, also downplaying claim by Islamic militants that they brought down the plane. An investigation with the help of data from aircraft's black boxes is yet to give its conclusions.
العمل مع صناديق كان بدأ بالفعل، لكن هي مجرد ساعات وأيام الأولى لهذا العمل. العمل يستغرق أسابيع.
Meanwhile, a second and final plane with bodies of crash victims arrived in St. Petersburg from Egypt as hundreds continue to pay tribute to the victims. The bodies will now be transported to the city's crematorium for identification. The plane with the 224 people on board had been headed from the Egyptian resort of Sharm el-Sheikh.
Без всяких сомнений должно быть сделано все, чтобы была создана объективная картина произошедшего, чтобы мы знали, что произошло, и соответствующим образом на это реагировали.
Russian officials have joined their Egyptian counterparts for an investigation at the crash scene. Aviation investigators from France and Germany, the countries where the plane was manufactured, are also taking part. The 2 black boxes are being transported to Cairo for analysis. At the moment, claims and counterclaims over the cause of crash continue to fly thick and fast.
but all talks have been dismissed by experts as mere conjectures. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
And European observers have slammed the recently concluded elections in Turkey, where President Erdogan's Justice and Development Party, AKP, regained its majority. The observers said that the violence marred the run-up to polls and that restricted some contestants' ability to campaign freely. It also criticized curbs on media freedom. In view of violence, the White House also urged Turkey to uphold universal democratic values. Now, clashes were reported in many Kurdish cities, including the city of Diyarbakir in the southeast of Turkey, as the results were being counted. Earlier, Turkish President Erdogan called on the world to respect the Sunday's election results. He had held the second general elections this year after the AKP lost its majority for the first time in 13 years in June, and attempts to form a coalition failed.
Fear is the enemy of democracy, enemy of a free choice. And in this sense, we are disappointed of the quality of the process. And in light of this, it's even more vital, and this is an appeal, that the President works in the future for a more inclusive political process.
The challenging security environment, in particular in the southeast, coupled with a high number of violent incidents, including attacks against party members, campaign staff, and party premises, hindered contestant ability to campaign freely.
Well, that's all in this edition of Breakfast News, but news and updates continue on your channel. Keep watching Rajya Sabha Television.